every online transaction you make, every like that you hit. Um, the Internet of Things is going to pick up your activities and it will tie it to that digital identity. It is 11:25 on Saturday night. Fun times if you're watching this live. You must be a mom or something. Anyway, this is going to be part 2 of my overview of inclusive capitalism. And I think I'm going to have to do several different parts because there really is just so much here. The last video that I did ran about an hour, and we went over some of the principles of Pillar 1 of inclusive capitalism, and we talked about things like what is sustainable development, and we talked a little bit about ESG investing and human capital investing, but we did not finish going over the policy recommendations that were associated with Pillar 1 of the Framework for Inclusive Capitalism. So that's what I want to do today, and I'll just give you a quick overview of what the Framework for Inclusive Capitalism is. I have put a link on the description for this live video, and you can click that to download a copy of the document from my Google Drive, or you can easily find it on the web just by typing in Framework for Inclusive Capitalism. So what is it? It is another name for the Great Reset or the New World Order or technocracy or any of these other programs that you have heard about, maybe as mythical, but they're very real, and they all have different names to sort of confuse you, to keep people guessing what they are, but they are essentially the same thing, and it is really a donation of the authority and powers of government to private corporations. I'm not sure if I would say it's a donation or really just a melding of the two. But you can see that the title for this, let me see if I've got the page that I can just show you. The title for, the full title for the Framework for Inclusive Capitalism is, I wrote it up here. A New Compact Among Businesses, Government, and American Workers. So this is really crucial. I pointed out last time, this is moving away from the social contract of the U.S. Constitution into a compact between businesses, government, and workers. So from this point out, you are a worker. We're all workers, and you have rights insofar as you are a worker. And we went over that. Let me see if it's hard for me to figure out which way to move here. So we have government and business, especially our large, adopt real policies and regulations to protect the well-being of employees, customers, their communities, and the planet. Okay, so this is the Build Back Better that you hear about. And how are we gonna approach the Build Back Better? It is by looking at how corporations can serve the needs and well-being of employees. Okay, so not government and citizens, is corporations, especially the largest corporations, and that's why we're seeing that small businesses, mid-sized businesses are being suffocated in this COVID hoax. The point is to reconfigure supply chains of labor and then the jobs that are available to people. So we're moving toward this new model of building back better that's going to be corporations that are assisted by the government, and those corporations are going to ensure that our rights are protected. Doesn't that sound great? It's really unbelievable. So, okay, so just a couple, maybe just a few more sentences about this. Okay, what the framework wants to do is it wants to promote the idea that government should develop systematic rules requiring a fairer, more just, and racially equitable economic system, including developing rules that give workers a meaningful opportunity to have their voices heard on such basic issues as compensation, benefits, and protection. So, if you're reading this quickly, it sounds good. We want fair wages. We want workers to be able to give feedback to their employers. Like, all of that sounds very reasonable. But once you start to unpack the terms and you understand how ESG and impact investing play into this whole matrix here, then we start to develop a sense of how sinister it is. Okay, so government's going to develop systematic rules. Those are going to apply to every business that survives this controlled demolition of our economy. Okay, so the government, and this is really the federal government, they're going to establish uniform rules that are going to measure your pay equity. They're going to set quotas for diversity, equity, inclusion, and let's see what's the other one. And they're also going to dictate how companies have to set up processes for employees to to express their voice in the company. So if you're a business owner, this is really going to sort of chip away at your ability to, set the tone of your own organization. Okay, and, in some cases, business owners are, going to take advantage of employees, and we don't want that to happen. And in those circumstances, we might say, oh, yay, it's good that the employees can speak up. But, I don't know, I'm kind of an optimist, and I think that's probably, I would hope that that is an exception, and that most of the, business owners want to do reasonably well by their employees, and they don't need the government to come in and start telling them how to treat those employees. I mean, because people can go find a different job, or they used to, and to be able to do that in the old economy. But that's why this is really, it's a controlled demolition. So this is on page 4 of the framework. Government and business policies and practices must be viewed through a lens which is bipartisan, inclusive, and focused on improving the lives of working people and their families. When you hear the term bipartisan, you'll see it all over Time magazine. You will see it in your local newspaper. They're going to say, this is bipartisan. This is pragmatic policy. It's not driven by politics. When you hear those terms, that is signifying the end of politics as we know it. Now, there's plenty of bad stuff to say about politics. There's fighting, there are inefficiencies, there are injustices that come from that, right? But what this is really priming us for is a move beyond politics. And you can see here, like, this is beyond politics. This is corporations and employees, workers. So when you look for, or when you're reading something and you hit that word bipartisan, generally it is pointing you toward a policy that has been developed on the basis of data, or it's evidence-based, or it is results-oriented. And that's where, this line, it's focused on improving the lives of working people and their families. That's looking at outcomes. So that's a results-oriented policy. And those those types of things, data-driven, what works, evidence-based, results-oriented, all of that has to do with using data to make decisions about outcomes. Now, really, those are as we've seen through Corona, like the data can be manipulated however you want. And within the model of ESG investing, are realized and they're not realized. So these are policies that have developed strong scientific causality between like inputs and outcomes. Really, they're just looking at corollaries. Okay, so are these two things correlated? And they're going to use that as the basis of evidence-based policy making. That's bipartisan. Okay, so government and business policies are going to be viewed through this lens, bipartisan. So we're moving beyond politics into this corporate governance model. Inclusive, that means, that's another buzzword. It means like everyone is going to have access, right? And it's focused on improving lives. So measuring outcomes, track and trace. And that's really, I think, when we look at these recommendations, you'll see that the entire plan of inclusive capitalism is about tracking and tracing attitudes, beliefs, your value as a human being, all of that. So one last thing before I get into the recommendations. I mentioned last time that there's some big bad guys that sponsor this program of inclusive capitalism. At the, you can see there, I don't know if you can see some of these names, but let me just give you the laundry list. Oh, the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism thanks the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, Michael A. Peterson and McDermott, Will, and Emery for their support, as well as the Bipartisan Policy Center, which helped to develop the Frameworks Commission. Okay. We also have the AFL-CIO, so your labor unions, totally on board with this fascist plan. American Council on Education, I ran into them when I was researching the hostile takeover of the university where I worked. Tulsa University, had joined ACE, the American Council on Education, like 10 years before I started looking into what was happening. So I think it was 2009 they joined. Most of your major research universities are a member, and that's why if you look, every single university or college in this country, I challenge you to find one that is not revamping their strategic plan to focus on social justice and like community engagement and what else do they say? Student success, all this junk, these BS words. It's all coordinated by the American Council on Education. And remember that this plan is about controlling the supply chains of labor. So all of your colleges and universities are complicit in this. They're promoting it. And, they are going to offer skills training. So, the example from Tulsa is that, like, TU, it was a small private liberal arts university with a strong engineering program and professional schools. Now they're going to focus on cybersecurity and healthcare and drone research, like aeronautical engineering. Okay, and those coincide with our regional economic development plan. So you can see that the universities all over the country are moving in this way, and they're not going to be offering the kind of education that you and I might remember from the good old days. Like that, it's really gone. So I would say don't waste your money on saving for those institutions, because they're just going to be training your student or yourself, if it's you, to acquire the skills that are going to be needed for business and industries of the fourth industrial revolution. So American Council on Education, we have the chair of Xerox, we have Brookings Institution, we have the Roger Ferguson, who is the former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. We have Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. We have Glenn Hubbard of Columbia Business School, technocracy there. We have Rockefeller Foundation president. We have a Chief Justice of the state of Delaware. MIT, the mayor of Dallas. So these are big guys, and they're not fooling around. This is coming, it's happening. So we need to know about it. Okay, so let me see. I think that was all I wanted to go over review. So now we'll move into Pillar 1. We went over the principles last time, so there are 3 pillars. I have them here. Create more opportunities for workers, expand the workforce, and then enable fair gain sharing for workers. Those are 3 pillars. We're just looking at Pillar 1. We went over the principles of Pillar 1 in the last video, and that was basically, Principle 1 is we're looking at all workers are essential and have basic rights. So instead of you being a citizen and having rights now, your rights derive from your status as a worker. And your pay is going to be linked to the value you create. That means that we're going to track and trace every bit of value that you have as an employee. So what is your human capital score? How does your life in all of its totality, and we're talking at home too, your off time, that will all be factored into this. How does that promote the mission of the corporation that you work for? And all of these are moving toward mission, purpose-based or mission-oriented models of I don't know, what would you say, like a corporate strategy and like their end goal. Okay, so first principle is that. The second is resilience. We want to safeguard workers from disruption. Really, that means that companies are going to be hedging their bets. They don't want to rely too much on any one employee. They want every part to be replaceable. So resilience is you're going to safeguard workers from disruption. Really, the company is managing its risk. So it has a lot to do with implementing digital technology so that you can work remotely, and it also has to do with job sharing and making sure that no one has a full-time position. Like we're all going to be basically Uber drivers or Instacart drivers, but they won't exist because, we have the automatic vehicles coming. It's nuts. Okay, 3 public investments to measure distribution of resources. This is smart cities. We want to track and trace like all of the impacts that our workforce is having on the company's bottom line. And number 4 was eradicate discriminatory policies that have led to disparities in pay and workforce. And, I said last time, I do not think these big corporations really care about racial justice. Like they don't care about creating harmony between blacks and whites and browns and women and people with disabilities and all of these other categories. Like they have done more to create divisions than anyone else. So, it just seems unbelievable to me that they would, shift on a dime, as it were. So I'm not buying it. I think really it is about controlling people's thoughts and beliefs and making everything that we do or say subject to corporate oversight. Okay, so it's already looking sinister. But then when you start to look at some of the recommendations, let me get my paper here. And I know you can't really see, it looks like to me like it might be a little out of focus, but I'll take a picture of this. And anyway, it's right from the document. So the first recommendation is to set national workplace safety standards. It reads, here, it reads health and safety. Every worker, including employees and independent contractors, should be able to do her or his job safely with adequate access to necessary protective equipment. See, the pandemics are not going to go away. They're going to be here forever if we let them. Medical testing and whistleblower protections for, get this, workers who witness and report unsafe conditions on the job. So this is not whistleblowers who are illuminating fraud in the organization. This is actually about snitching and saying, okay, this is unsafe, right? And, we're moving toward a biosecurity prison model. So I think that's important that it's in there. Anyway, national workplace safety standards to protect all workers from injury and infectious disease and ensure adequate federal enforcement of these standards. So this is a major regulatory burden on these corporations. Now, maybe some of the software and other tracking devices, maybe those will be distributed to small businesses or medium-sized businesses on a grant, because of course those all harvest tons of data that's very valuable to the app developer or the software manager. But just think of all of the reporting requirements and the different kinds of liability protocols that every company that survives this economic demolition is going to have to implement on their campus and with their workers. So, national standards. If people who have gotten into this by watching education, that Common Core, it was all about aligning, and making sure that we had national standards, right? So it's like Common Core for the corporate world, okay? So that is the first, health and safety. The second recommendation from the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism is it pertains to workforce dislocation and retention. This really goes to principle number 2 here, it was listed as B. Companies should prioritize policies to protect their workforce. All workers should be valued and treated with dignity, not as disposable assets or liabilities. Oh, it sounds so nice. And wouldn't it be nice if it were true? But it's not. Because, this is saying that we want to have, this shift in employer attitude. So they're going to measure employer attitudes toward workers. How are you going to measure that? There will be ways. There will be endless professional development courses that are administered through your HR departments. And if you look, all the big philanthropies and, these partners, they fund the Society for Human Resource Management. You can look that up. I'll try to find a link later. But these giant corporations are funding your HR departments that are, then marketed many different tools for recording things like how employers will demonstrate that they value and treat with dignity their workforces. Okay. The shift in employer attitude would improve worker retention, expand quality and capability of our workforce and company output, as well as companies' responsive capacity and consumer health by maximizing job-preserving policies such as work sharing. So here, that's where this is really headed, is we want to maximize job-preserving policies such as work sharing. So they are saying that, employers will be treating their employees with dignity if they figure out ways to retain those employees' services, even when, they might not. I lost my train of thought for 1 second. Even when there might be some kind of major disruption. Okay, so it goes to this resilience work, safeguard workers from disruption. So we're saying that we're going to preserve job policies by job sharing. We're saying that's going to keep the company open, in times of a pandemic, or, it's going to protect the company from risk if we have more than one person able to do a job. But really, when we think about it, it decreases the value of the individual employee. So I think it's sort of like double speak there. We're going to be moving toward gig work and job sharing. And it says, workers should have input into these policies. I think there have been these studies that say, if you are consulted about some change that is being proposed, and you register your opinion on, say, in a listening session, that's a word that they use a lot, then, you feel better about a decision, even if it's a decision that ultimately hurts your interests. You feel better about it if you have at least gotten to voice your opinion. So that's what many of these calls for employees having a voice in corporate governance, that's what it's about. It's about managing expectations and feelings that employees have. Okay. Also, for the second, under the second recommendation, is that the government should expand, modernize, and fund state unemployment insurance systems. Companies should provide reasonable severance benefits, and they should partner in education, training, and career assistance programs. And workers taking advantage of these programs should not be penalized by losing any government or other benefits. So I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work, but I think this is putting a burden on employers for if they do have to fire someone. And anyone who's been paying attention to the plight of small business knows that they might have to fire someone in order to stay in business at all. But this puts a big burden on those small businesses because they're going to have to pay a reasonable severance. At the same time, we're seeing that you're going to have the government offer unemployment insurance, and even while these companies are going to have to provide education and job training. So if someone is let go, the company is going to have to pay severance benefits and fund some sort of career training, and that employee who has been let go is also going to receive unemployment insurance. Well, we see that many companies today are having a tough time finding employees. I think that is because of lots of people have said, well, it has to do with it's more some of the unemployment benefits, you receive more in unemployment than you would working. Now, I'm not sure how true that is. I think there's probably some of that, but I think there are other things going on, like it's a manufactured labor shortage. But in any event, like this, offering the unemployment insurance is going to complicate the prospects for small businesses to be able to find new employees once the time comes, because once you're fired, you get unemployment insurance and you get to retrain, and so you're probably just going to hang out for a while. Okay. And let's see. Okay, so number 3 then is under the recommendations it is generally classified as modern workforce, and it says government, corporate, and labor policies should take into account the evolving nature of the modern workforce. This is the 4th industrial revolution. It is everything bad that has to do with automation, quantum computing, digital life, remote work, robotics, you name it, nanotech. That's the 4th industrial revolution. And let's see. Okay, so it's saying government, corporate, and labor policy should take into account the evolving nature of the modern workforce, including, and this is big, standards for correctly classifying workers. So this is your track and trace. It is your human capital scoring. This is making sure that every corporation is going to have to detail out what type of worker this person is, what job duties they have. I mean, it's a mess of paperwork, and I know many firms are already doing this kind of thing, but it's going to go into overdrive, and these standards are going to be uniform across the country. Okay. Federal and state policies need to adapt to the changing nature of the labor market by ensuring that labor laws are modernized for this new environment, that workers are properly classified, and ensure that all workers are properly paid for their work. So it is really all about social credit scoring, or you could say corporate credit scoring. Workers are properly classified. Are you a knowledge worker? What are the prospects for, your sector of work? They want to be able to bet on you ultimately, like impact investors. That's not the subject of this talk here, but, impact investors are going to bet on human capital futures. And Alison McDowell's blog, wrenchinthegears.com, is an excellent source of information about betting on human capital. So this number 3 policy recommendation that sets up classifying workers and, again, ensure all workers are properly paid for their work, that goes back to this measuring the value they create. Okay. Let's see. This is a little bit more on that number 3, and that says government must have adequate resources to ensure that companies properly classify their workers. So I am just assuming here that this is tech, it's surveillance, it is oversight of, say, company hiring records. They're going to want those to monitor your diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also to make sure that companies are properly classifying their workers. It says government, business, and labor, and that's labor unions. That's your AFL-CIO that is a sponsor of this document. They should work together to innovate new employment models and rules, especially workforce sharing agreements. So I have 4 kids, and they're gonna have to deal with this work sharing the workforce is going to be very precarious. It's going to be cutthroat. It is going to be globally competitive. It's really a race to the bottom in terms of employee rights, and employee control of their economic power of their lives. So this really, I don't know, it really bothers me as a mom, and I'm sure any of us who are facing the prospects of needing to get a job in the next 5 years or so. Maybe you've been laid off and you're looking for a new one. You're going to have to deal with this reality of workforce sharing agreements. And, this plan makes it sound like they want to protect those workers who are like independent contractors. But really that's going to be based on portable benefits, portable federal benefits that are given to employees. Some of the benefits might be all right, but you're going to be, which is like your ticket to servitude, because that tracks and traces every single thing you do in your personal life, every online transaction you make, every like that you hit. The Internet of Things is going to pick up your activities and it will tie it to that digital identity. And I think that this plan is selling portable benefits for workers as a way of sort of bringing in that digital identity. Okay. The fourth recommendation is that we need to integrate technology with worker opportunity. And it says technological change does not have to lead to job loss. Okay, that's the fourth industrial revolution. It is going to lead to job loss. But they say here it doesn't have to. Government policies must be adopted to ensure that increases in productivity benefit the workers who use new technology to be more productive. Valuing the expertise and contribution of workers and involving workers in the decision-making process are often key to successful innovation. Okay, robots are going to take most of our jobs. AI is going to take most of our jobs. And we're talking white-collar jobs too. Lawyers, doctors, teachers, accountants, all sorts of jobs that we might think are very, stable. They've been in our society for a long time. Like those are going out the door with the 4IR. Okay. But this is saying that we need to, try to mitigate those losses. I mean, I really can't figure out a way to say that this is anything but double speak here. But we want to make sure that increases in productivity benefit the workers. They're going to do that through surveillance and smart cities and measuring impacts, which requires track and trace applications and things. Okay, government policy needs to assist historically disadvantaged communities and regions by ensuring that workers share in the benefits of jobs created through new public investment for economic development, public services, and infrastructure. Such assistance would support worker access to quality assured education that is programmed. It will be tailored to specific outcomes, and they're going to measure your like how well you perform, like what your outcomes are as an individual in order to, aggregate that or put that into the data aggregation for whatever training module they're testing out. Okay. So they want to rate how effective their programs are, and they'll use your data to help them rate. It says companies should seek to expand job opportunities for their employees whose jobs are disrupted. So it's on the burden, it's the burden of the corporation to find a new home for displaced workers, and to coordinate local education and training with the needs of employers so that workers can be trained for better jobs and empowered to choose their area of work. So, I've talked about like the P20 pipeline to the workforce, and that's, it's the cradle to career pipeline where you have educational institutions, and this is like from pre-K all the way up to Ph.D. if they even still have that. But there's going to be an alignment of curriculum and the skills that are offered, and your progress through that pipeline to the workforce is going to be tracked and traced. And if the needs of the businesses and industries in your area change, say you've been in the pipeline to become, say, a welder, and in real time, if the needs of the industries in your area change from welding to, I don't know, painting, then they can modify, the course of your pipeline. And most of the time you won't even know it, because all education is going to be delivered. It's when it says quality assured, that really means like it's standardized, which really means it's going to be delivered online so that all of the inputs can be regulated, and then the outcomes, the delivery, there will be no variations. Okay, so they're going to set up this pipeline to the workforce and coordinate local education with the needs of employers. And remember, these are the targeted industries in your area, the ones that will survive this economic demolition. These are the guys that are already entrenched in your Chamber of Commerce. These are the big banks. They're the big manufacturing outlets. They're the people who are cozy with the foundations that are running this crazy train. So those businesses and industries are already quite powerful in our areas, and they're just going to become more powerful with this alignment. And those industries have been preparing for this digital change for a long time. So, in my state, they've been courting more aeronautics firms, aeronautical engineering firms, we have Amazon plants here, we have Google, we have, all sorts of 4IR companies, and they have all been preparing for this massive automation that's going to occur. They've had the knowledge beforehand, whereas, small businesses, restaurants, live music venues, those kinds of places, they did not have that advance warning. Okay, 5. Under recommendations, rewarding more inclusive workforce models. Okay. Government, workforce development organizations, and employers should seek to understand the key factors for success in developing a more diverse and inclusive capitalism workforce model. The Commerce and Labor Departments should work together with corporations to accelerate innovations in how corporations recruit, reward, and invest in a diverse workforce. These departments, Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce, they are a partner for Inclusive Capitalism. They work with your chambers of commerce locally. If you're in Tulsa, you should know that our Chamber of Commerce is very powerful. I think it's been a top 10 Chamber of Commerce any number of times. They're betting against us. They are planning the economy right under our noses, and it sounds like they're, pro free enterprise and things like that. No, 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 no. This is not free enterprise. It is a planned, managed economy that benefits the elites who are already, you know, very far ahead of us regular people in terms of resources and power and things like that. So the Commerce and Labor departments are going to work together to help corporations accelerate innovation, and they're going to use a race to the top model. That was a model that was used in education and Common Core. So it says race to the top, but really you're like slipping down into the bottom. A race to the top for most inclusive company for workers. And this is your branding, this is your marketing. So you have these little badges that you earn, and those are going to distinguish one corporation from another. Oh, we're most inclusive. This would require companies to develop and report proactive plans for reaching employment and pay equity across gender, race, and ethnic gaps, as well as diversity and governance indicators by employee category, such as workforce compensation, pay equity, reward benefits, investments in training and diversity, equity, and inclusion metrics. So this is a monitoring and reporting hell. They recommend adopting uniform standards. This would affect corporate behavior towards workers in the same way that the LEED system impacted green building and development. So here we're going to have the government and the largest corporations telling everyone else what kinds of metrics they have to track and trace and report on. And they're going to say that this is about, making sure that we have, different races and the different sexes and different ethnicities represented in the workforce. But, again, I'm just telling, based on just all the research that I've done, not just looking at this document in particular, most of these plans that say that they are going to help minorities, they're written by the same people that are destroying minority schools and education. So if you look at Tulsa's North Side, it's mainly minorities, a large African American population and large Latino population, and their schools have been just demolished. They have been destroyed. Like the one school went through something like 23 principals in like 2 years. Okay, you'll have to check my statistic on that, but when the same people are calling for, saying that they support diversity and inclusion, but they're wrecking, the communities that, they're wrecking the community schools of, minority populations, then something seems wrong, to me about that. And, we have some, one-stop shops. That's another buzzword. They offer training, and then, they do career placement services, and that's key to this model. You'll see that these one-stop shops pop up all over. And I've talked to some people who have used those, and the one that I'm thinking of, it's at 30, it's not 36 degrees north, but it's the one that is on the north side that is similar. Anyway, the training was a joke. It was, what I was told was that you sit on a computer all day, you press some buttons, and then, you go out for a job that a robot could do. So basically they're just harvesting that person's data when he's inputting, his answers to whatever this training module is. So I'm very skeptical about these claims to, for racial equity and, the ethnic and gender gaps. Like, all of that seems very disingenuous to me. Number 6. Oh, I said I was going to try to do this so quickly. Research and development. Okay, we want to reinvigorate America's legacy of basic R&D. I don't know what basic R&D is. Foundational infrastructure, I'm not sure. Which pioneered new technology and opportunity pathways for workers from telecommunications to computing to energy development. Okay, so they want to do that by expanding government investment in groundbreaking R&D with full life cycle planning that aligns, listen to this, government spending and priorities with business and worker benefits. So full planning, full integration of government spending and priorities with business and worker benefits. So I would love to know how there is a difference between government and business in this model. It says it will strengthen international competitiveness, reinforce economic growth, and create new good jobs. International competitiveness. Well, in what? Military defense technologies, or, our workers are going to be able to apply for, jobs that they can perform remotely here for, companies across on the other side of the world. What, I don't know what this means. But it does seem to represent a huge fusion of government and business, and I would say against individuals. And you'll notice that this doesn't really say, it usually says workers in the plural, and not the American worker, as in you, a person with individual rights. It's always workers. So you're part of the collective, and you only have rights insofar as you participate in that workers' collective. Okay, so again, on research and development, reinvigorating America's legacy. To make this policy effective, they want to share the returns, share the returns from this investment. Government should link this investment in different R&D projects with equity as appropriate, so that taxpayers share in the returns that are generated by this public investment. When we're talking about equity, it really is about making sure that your that the benefits that you get, like the resources that you have, are equal to everyone else's. And it says they're going to do this so that taxpayers share in the returns. Well, we're going to be funding this stuff. We're going to be fleeced. But when they talk about linking it to equity, then that really means measuring, tracking, and tracing. And the whole thing is measuring, tracking, and tracing, which is surveillance, which is giving the government and these large corporations, we're talking Amazon, Microsoft, Walmart, and Guild Education, which is a Walmart spinoff. They are one of the major sponsors for this program here. And they do micro-credentials and badges that, those are the marks of your human capital social credit score right there. Guild Education, you can look them up. Bad news. So, when we see them talk about government linking the investment with equity, then that really means we're going to be measuring the distribution of these benefits. We're going to be measuring their impact on the communities that they're distributed to, and then we're gonna we're gonna equalize it, we're gonna level it out and make sure that everyone gets a fair share. Okay, it says, a significant amount of this investment should aim to counterbalance trends toward geographic inequality, including between prospering and disadvantaged regions of the country, with R&D, workforce, business linkages, and allied investments targeted to generate inclusive local economic growth. So this is the redistribution of resources across the country to target areas that are depressed economically and raise them up, but that is, it's going to be bringing down areas that are strong economically. You're going to have it. This really is a zero-sum game that we're talking about. And if you look at the marketing, we're moving to a net zero economy. Sustainable economic development means that you balance the load of production and consumption. So this is not really a growth economy. It is a sustainable or circular economy. And so we're going to take economic activity from one area that's very strong, and that might be, a source of power for a particular area, maybe to defend their individual rights against this surveillance police state that we're moving toward. We're going to take that economic potential or power, and we're going to move it to a distressed community. And you can listen to a webinar that I think I posted it before, and it talks about it's a webinar on inclusive capitalism and the Biden initiative with the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance. And they argue that we need to reauthorize the Community Reinvestment Act. I forget when that was first passed, but that act basically gives big banks and institutional investors major tax breaks for investments in distressed areas, and they get to choose what businesses and industries they support in these distressed areas. And there are all sorts of problems with how those programs work. Like if you look at opportunity zones or promised neighborhoods, frequently the community of people that's living there, they're blighted out of the place through eminent domain abuse. And then these big banks come in and they raise the properties, and then they dump a bunch of money in investing in, new economic growth sectors, but they're the ones that the big banks have chosen, and they give them to their crony friends. I mean, it happens around every university. You can look at TU and what happened down on 6th Street to see how, the community that's lived there for a long time, they are kicked out, and the big banks get a tax break for transforming these, organic communities into, the Agenda 21, like this city's making a comeback communities. I post that little meme, and it says, your city's making a comeback if you've got an axe throwing bar, ramen noodle bar, scooters, all of that stuff. So you can see it happening if you just look. But yeah, they want to move wealth around, and they want to use that Community Reinvestment Act to, just to benefit the banks more. It's twisted. They want to run national competitions for inclusive development goals, and maybe come up with a national innovation dividend also. That makes us feel better about it. Here's the last one for tonight. Let's see. Combat workplace discrimination and adopt policies requiring more inclusive hiring and advancement. Government and business at all levels should adopt and enforce vigorous policies to combat systemic discrimination in all forms. Employment outcomes for women, people of color, and persons with disabilities have been so uneven for so long that combating them requires government policies and employer practices which go far beyond the existing federal legal and equal opportunity standards bare minimum of non-discrimination in hiring and firing processes. Well, let's just imagine how this is going to work. It's going to be the AI that's going to do all of your recruiting and hiring and promoting. I mean, that's the only way to make sure that that these policies, these non-discrimination policies, are vigorously enforced. Part of this entire New World Order program is designed to tell human beings how bad and selfish and terrible we are, and how we just want to take advantage of other people, and we don't like little guys, and we're, everybody besides us is a little guy, and it's very anti-human. It's trying to convince us to be anti-human, right? On so many levels. Like, you're a vector of disease. You have screwed up the planet, like you're eating too much. So that's a major psychological push in this whole program, right? And if you think about that and why they would want to do that, well, one, I think they're just evil people. But two, we have to doubt ourselves, and we have to think that we have these implicit biases, and some people are prejudiced and some people are jerks, and like, that's real, okay? But we have to doubt our ability to make a good, fair decision based on who could do the job best, who deserves the job. Is it good to, if you're choosing between a black person and a white person, is it better to give it to the black person in this circumstance if he's not more qualified? Or same thing with a white person. It doesn't, any way it goes. This, we're supposed to doubt our ability to make those good decisions, so that we do what? Turn to the AI to make them for us. And you can already see that programs of AI they're determining how college students choose a major. I posted about that a long time ago. I don't know if I can find it again, but the AI is going to direct college students' pathways, and then it's going to connect with your HR department. And, you're not going to have any choice in who's hired in your organization. You're going to be forced to buy a program, or, opt in to some software as a service, and it's going to do all the hiring for you. So we need to be on guard for that. Also, it says we need to set job requirements that facilitate inclusive employment. We need to extend recruitment to ensure that sourcing includes candidates from marginalized communities, and reward underrepresented employees with management promotions. The process begins with the proactive recruitment and consideration of underrepresented populations and candidate pools, extends to the fair evaluation of workers. So this goes to your classification. Companies are gonna, in order to make a fair evaluation of workers, you're gonna have a standardized evaluation form. This is gonna come from the government, and you are not going to be able to make decisions about your own business. And let's see. And we want this fair evaluation to continue through the employment chain. So there's going to be a lot of shifting, a lot of making sure that we have just the right mix of people to do these jobs. But the right mix for whom? I mean, that's always the question. Really, it's gonna, this framework is designed to benefit the partners in the coalition, and that is, the big real estate giants is the Federal Reserve. It is, Xerox. It's MIT. It's not, it's not people who are regular people who have come up with a business and are trying to make it work, and those are the kinds of businesses that we need to stay open, because those are the ones that can protect their employees and say, we're not going to make you get a jab. We want to hire you, and we don't care if you get the jab, or we want to let you breathe freely. So, that's why I really want to stress the importance of protecting small business, because this whole fourth industrial revolution is designed to cause massive unemployment, and that is so that people can be rolled into government services, and they are nudged and tracked and traced and genetically engineered, not socially engineered, and then later probably genetically engineered with all the junk that they're going to be required to take. So we have to find a way to protect people's ability to provide for themselves and their families in this messed up world. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I said it was going to be short. It wasn't short, but maybe you can listen to it at 1.5 speed or something. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, and I'll just keep doing these as long as you guys think that they're helpful. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.